Stone Cold Prose, Building Better Words.
What is Civilization? Civilization is a series of turn-based strategy video games first released in 1991. The series is considered a formative example of the 4X genre, in which players achieve victory through 4 routes: explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. This introduction, courtesy of Wikipedia, spares me having to summarize the game which never fails to amaze me: Civilization. For it is by playing Civilization, more than history lessons, that the present course of affairs in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, Africa becomes readily understandable to me. So too to past historical events: wars, depressions, blockades, colonizations, religious crusades, genocides. Indeed, it isn't an exaggeration to say that everything a person needs to know about what Bismarck referred to coldly as realpolitik, a system of politics and principles based on practical rather than moral, ethical, or ideological considerations, can be taught simply by playing this game. Put simply, Civilization is a tutorial on the real world, not the one diplomats and politicians and willfully credulous people in the public pretend exists, but reality, cold, hard, and cruel. Hi guys, welcome back to Stone Cold Prose, where we build better words, better thoughts, and better men. I'm Miles Watson, novelist and author of such award-winning series as Cage Life, Sinner's Cross, The Chronicles of Magnus, and now Something Evil. I spent 10 years in the criminal justice field, another 12 in Hollywood, and now I break it all down and build it back better. So let's get into this. I first started playing Civilization sometime in the mid-1990s, and I was immediately addicted and obsessed. The initial version was, of course, terribly crude and clunky by today's standards, and the artificial intelligence of my computer opponents in Civilization 1, was at best mediocre. Nevertheless, the game had intrinsic appeal. It not only required a knowledge of strategy, tactics, it demanded a deeper knowledge of how civilizations come into power, how they maintain power once they have it, how they expand that power, and if incautious or cowardly, how they lose that power. Like Game of Thrones or The Sopranos, it was as much a study of power as a thing in itself, as it was a form of entertainment, and it taught us its lessons in the most brutal way possible, by punishing ignorance, mistakes, and failures without mercy. Success meant survival, failure meant destruction. Now, as the years went by, Civilization became more sophisticated and nuanced, and the computerized opponents became more intelligent. Features were added or expanded, other features were removed or replaced, but the basic nature of the game remained more or less unchanged. Simply put, it was this. Beginning in the Stone Age, you were tasked with building a, go figure this, civilization, expanding it, acquiring strategic resources, raising its level of technology, keeping your people happy, not always easy, negotiating trade deals, building infrastructure, and protecting yourself from the aggression of hostile barbarian tribes and unfriendly civilizations. If successful, your society would last until the end of the game, roughly 4,000 years after it began. So you started with stone clubs and bearskins and ended with atomic bombs and orbiting satellites. How you achieved that end was up to you. Players had choices in styles of government. They also had choices in foreign policy. But, and this was the key, they had to react to the choices of their neighbors as well. The computer played different rival civilizations in different ways. Some were outwardly friendly and simply wanted to trade. Others were aggressive and bullying and preferred to take what they wanted by force of arms. Some were scientifically bent. Some were crazy about commerce, and others concerned only with war. And some were unpredictable, or simply treacherous. As I said above, playing Civilization did not require a tutorial. It was a tutorial, completely a moral one. The human player had nearly absolute power over his society and was largely free to craft a strategy and a policy entirely in keeping with his own personality. Sometimes vice was punished, sometimes it was rewarded. Sometimes virtue led to downfall, other times to triumph. There was no right answer, that covered every situation. Whatever worked was right. The goal was not to achieve some platonic ideal plane, but simply to survive and thrive at any cost. By playing Civilization, I came to see that while every form of government was represented, despotism, monarchism, feudalism, republicanism, democracy, fascism, communism, even anarchy, their ultimate ambitions remain the same. And when one's ambitions are the same, one's methods tend toward sameness. In 25 years of playing various iterations of the game, I began to grasp that its ongoing popularity stems from the fact that when you scrape away all the rhetoric, there's nothing to distinguish a good campaign of Civilization from a study of human history. Literally almost nothing. All the horror, all the carnage, all the cruelty and misery, all the seemingly needless tension and confrontation between nations and tribal groups, the complete inability of those nations and groups to act in unity even on issues of seemingly mutual interest, such as pollution or the environment. It's all here. So here, in a nutshell, is what I learned. Number one, resources are everything. In Civilization, there are strategic resources which are beneficial for the populace. Fish in the ocean, for example, or game in the woods, or gold in the hills, them there hills. There are others which are beneficial to trade, such as dyes, jewels, wines, furs. But there are certain resources, such as iron, horses, saltpeter, coal, rubber, oil, aluminum, and uranium, which are indispensable to warfare. Iron makes swords and armor. Saltpeter makes gunpowder. Coal fires warships. Oil fuels tanks and aircraft. In ancient times, the society which has access to things like iron has a huge advantage over societies stuck in the Stone or Bronze Ages. Thus, the early phase of the game is a scramble for iron and for horses to provide chariots and later horsemen and cavalry. Later, as technology advances, different resources come into play, and so the scramble never ceases. Today's civilization with the best swordsmen and archers and horsemen is mowed down tomorrow by the musketeers, by the riflemen and the infantry of the society that first acquired gunpowder. Trade is always an option, but only a fool or a desperate king indeed trades away resources that can be used to slit his throat at a later time. And so an aggressive foreign policy is usually necessary, lest a nation fall behind in that never-ceasing scramble for the earth's riches. Rare earths, anyone? In short, those who have dominate and those who have not steal or die. Number two, all alliances are of convenience. In world history, countries speak of friendship and cultural bonds and international brotherhood and fraternity. In Civilization, any nation that offers friendship either does so because they wish to trade, you have something they want but can't or don't want to take by force, or because they are weak and fear offending you, or because they are at war with a third power and hope to enlist you in the fight against them. Friendships in Civilization, as in Washington, D.C., are transactional and never last longer than necessity dictates. Today's generous trade deal and mutual protection pact is tomorrow's unprovoked sneak attack. There is no loyalty and there is no gratitude, just like Hollywood. From a leader's point of view, the world is divided into threats and assets. There is no extra category for buddies. Number three, technology is mainly for killing. All technological advancements lead to corresponding improvements in the quality of life for the people. Granaries, aqueducts, hospitals, mass transit systems, etc., etc., all wonderful for John and Jane Q. Public. On the other hand, the very first use of any new technology usually has a military application. Iron makes great tools. It also makes fine swords. Coal builds warm fires. It also fuels battleships. A nuclear power plant can light up a city. A nuclear bomb can flatten one. The first priority of a leader is to make sure his civilization has all the best weaponry, all the best technology that they can possibly afford. Benefits to society are a secondary consideration, and any society that reverses this model and puts sanitation, medicine, infrastructure, science, and so on ahead of making barracks and handing out rifles will soon find itself invaded by a civilization with a different set of priorities. On the other hand, a society which doesn't feed its scientific research and build universities and so forth will not produce competitive technology. And it too will go down in flames. Leadership is a balancing act between guns and butter, brains and brawn, but ultimately, the nation that doesn't find a way to make a microchip lethal ain't gonna last. 4. There is no mercy, Cobra Kai. Just as there is no friendship in world society, there's also no mercy in world affairs. In trade, one must drive the hardest possible bargain. In war, one must make the most rapacious demands the enemy will accept. In diplomacy, one must pile on alliances for the purpose of carving up once prosperous rival nations like roasts. Why? Because this is what your opponents will do to you. They will never give you what you want in trade without demanding as much or more than it is worth. They will never offer peace terms in war that you would ever want to accept. They will never hesitate to build multinational alliances to destroy you, and they will never refrain from trying to frustrate your ambitions in passive ways. By hemming in your borders, colonizing resource-rich areas you covet for yourself, refusing to trade needed items, or signing trade embargoes. That's aggression. Act ruthlessly in your strength, because you will be treated pitilessly in your weakness. And never forget, the enemy you spare today will be at your throat again tomorrow. As Clausewitz once wrote, the mistakes that come from kindness are the very worst. 5. Wars are like fires. Starting one doesn't mean you can put it out. Nothing is easier than starting a war. However, once a war is engaged, you may find the fighting going against you and seek to make peace once again, or you may achieve your limited objectives initially and then seek to end hostilities before your army takes too many losses or your opponent bribes a third party to come in on his side against you. But in either case, you may discover your enemy is in no mood to come to the treaty table. What with the fact that you burned down 6 of his cities, robbed him of all of his best agricultural land, and cut him off from the ocean. War is necessary in civilization, but it should never be carried out offensively unless you have A, a clear idea of how you plan to win it, B, contingency plans if things go badly, and C, you can afford to lose all the men you commit in the initial phase of the war. Rulers always see war as an easy way out of economic or political troubles, but they never seem to consider that they might actually lose. Just ask Napoleon or Mussolini or Hitler or Putin. Number 6, karma is consequence, not judgment. There is no morality in realpolitik, but actions do have practical repercussions. Violating peace treaties without cause, betraying an alliance, employing atomic weapons, burning down cities, etc., are all great ways to become an international success. They're also great ways to become an international pariah. The computer has a long memory for treachery, and today's actions of amoral convenience are tomorrow's moral retributions. The funny thing about being totally amoral, neither good nor evil, but simply opportunistic, is that it does not spare you the consequences of your decisions. This applies not merely to warfare, but to the environment as well. You can chop down forests, draining wetlands, using coal-fired factories, dropping atomic bombs. All this can come back to haunt you. Number 7. Government adapts itself to suit necessity. If you want to wage aggressive wars, democracy has to take a hike. Think about that one for a while. Number 8, international law. Ultimately, no pact, law, treaty, or code of ethics which threatens your survival will itself survive contact with reality. A person who, in real life, abominates war and militarism, bemoans huge defense budgets, is environmentally conscious, preaches for social justice, etc., will immediately become the most bloodthirsty and ruthless tyrant imaginable when handed the electronic reins of power in a game of civilization. He will betray allies. He will bomb defenseless towns. He will massacre captured workers, conduct scorched earth policies, launch nuclear missiles. Part of this comes from the fact that the killing in civilization is, of course, not real, any more than the violence in a novel or a television show is real. But a significant part of it also comes from the fact that ideology seldom stands up to the face of necessity. Pacifism is an easy stance to adopt when no one is actually trying to kill you. Environmental responsibility is common sense. right up to the moment the alternative to burning coal is freezing to death. Communism is and always has been the delight of every college professor until the country starves or drowns in corruption. Civilization is a great counter to the clever, smirky debate society arguments you see on social media, because it puts all the power in your hands and then says, the enemy is at the gates, they refuse to negotiate, what are you going to do? Now, you may think all of this is horrible, that these are manifestly not the lessons people need to be taught about world affairs, especially given the generally awful state of the world today. That maybe a game should be designed which rewards only the most moral, the most ethical, the most beneficent and merciful decisions. There is, after all, nowhere near enough compassion in this world, and there is nowhere near enough empathy. And wouldn't it be grand if we could artificially stimulate a previously numb area of our brains and coax a greater affinity for these things? I'm all for such a game, but the stark fact is that the appeal of civilization lies mainly in the fact that it is not a game. It is a reasonably accurate, if stripped down to the essentials, reflection of the world we actually live in. It's a tutorial on human nature, and to succeed in playing Civilization is to demonstrate, to a small degree, the qualities necessary to succeed in the real world that humans actually inhabit. This is in itself perhaps appalling, but that does not make it less true. As Sergeant Barnes opined in Platoon, there's the way it ought to be, and there's the way it is. This then is what I learned playing Civilization. You may not like it, but if you can play a few rounds of this game and not come away with a better understanding of why nations do such cruel, destructive, and ugly things, and why even vastly different forms of governmental systems often make startlingly similar decisions and errors in judgment, chances are you're either deluded or just very, very thick. Folks, if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, and remember to check out my books on Amazon under my own name, Miles Watson. On this channel, I drop book reviews every Monday, just for the heck of it, scripted content every Friday, and shorts almost every day. I will see you next time, and until then, stay cold.